Welcome to the Urban Wine Club podcast. Pour a glass, sit back, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Vines Unknown, where we explore different parts of the world, where we bring to you the best of the regions that are not so familiar with us. And in this segment, we're exploring a region in the Peloponnese of Greece. We're going to be exploring Nemea. And with us today, obviously, my co-host, Ari Kalos.
Hello.
And along with us, our special guest, not just a special guest, but I think our resident of our program, Johnny Livanos of Diamond Wine Importers. Johnny, welcome to the segment.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
More dear guest of ours that's been participating that we are honored to always have with us. Cookbook author, anthropologist. She has a fascinating resume and background, but with any ado, let's invite also Susanna Hoffman to the segment. Susanna, thank you so much for always taking time through your busy schedule, because compared to what we do, I say, wow, this is an honor to always have you here.
Tell me to stop somehow. Somebody's yeah.
Right. And this is, again, another special segment where it's an area in Greece that I've been familiar with over the last 20 years being in the trade. When I first started, Nemea, which is that northeast corner of the Peloponnese, was basically a focus point then, before Santorini got its popularity and its credibility in the industry. And that's where I started. I started exploring wines from Greece, from that part of the world. And then things evolved and things changed. And I'm glad that we're back here, because I think we need to show some more insight on this very special part of Greece. For me, I always considered Nemea back then as the Napa of Greece, even though it doesn't really make a direct connection, but that's the way I kind of like to explain it to those that are not familiar with Nemea. But that's why we have Johnny and Susanna here with us. Johnny, tell us a little bit more about, in your experiences and your thoughts about the region of Nemea.
Yeah, so it's funny. Actually, the wines from Nemea were the first Greek wines that I had that made me want to dig more into Greek wine. So I before moving back to New York, I lived in Washington, D.C., and I was a bar manager at a restaurant called Zaytinya, and they had a big Greek wine program. And I remember I had the Skouras, Moscow Filero, and the Ioritiko, the St. George, which we are featuring today, and both those wines. And I was just blown away at the level of quality, the flavor components, just all about these wines. And it's something that I wasn't familiar with. I didn't realize Greece had such really beautiful, approachable styles of wine that were also so unique and had so much history. So yeah, one of the first regions I got introduced to, and now I just ended up dedicating my life and career to Greek wine. So I feel like this region was like the focal point, the starting point for me. Right. As you said, Nemea kind of is like the Napa of Greece. And I think I like to think of that because of its proximity to Athens. I think that's a big plus for the region, is that it's so close to Athens. You could drive there. It's near the city of Nafplio, which is the Susanna, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's the original capital of Greece.
The original capital, yeah.
Yeah, so the original capital of Greece is right there, right near this region of Nemea.
Modern Greece.
Modern, yeah.
Yeah.
The original the capital of modern Greece. And so there's basically two wines that grow in this region. Well, first of all, Nemea is the PDO, or protected designation of origin, for the grape Ioritiko. So I'm going to share my screen. Actually, I'm going to show a couple slides just to kind of talk about gin a little bit. All right. So here we are. Here's our map of Greece. Athens is right there in the middle. And then if you drive over the Corinth Canal, you're right there. So Nafplio is somewhere in this area here, in this little red splotch. This is the region of Nemea. And then as a whole, we're talking about the whole Peloponnese today. And right here, this yellow-orange spot is Mantinea. So these are the two main wine regions of the Peloponnese. So So Peloponnese is a peninsula. It kind of looks like a giant island, but it's connected by a tiny, tiny strip of land right here over the Corinth Canal. Mantinea is dedicated to white wine, the grape Moscofilero. And then Nemea is dedicated 100% to Ayoritico, which is a red wine region. And the region historically was called St. George, Ayos Yorgos, which is where the name of the grape comes from, Ayoritico. And Ayoritico means St. George in Greece. And I'm just going to go through a couple slides, show some pictures, and then we could just chat casually about them. And then we're featuring 3 wines from our producer we import, Domaine Skouras. And the 2 wines we're tasting again, Moscofilero, Ayoritico. So these are some pictures of the grapes. What I love about this region is, and you compared it to Napa Valley. Remember, Napa's like there's a lot of mountains and hills. It's a valley. And Nemea and Mantinea both are high elevation vineyards. So the Peloponnese, and in Greece in general, a lot of people think of Greece as just islands, but Greece is, I think it's over 70% covered in mountains. So it's actually, there are a lot of high altitude wine regions. And Mantinea, where the Moscofilero grows, it's actually one of the tallest or highest elevation of vineyards in Europe. For the wine we're tasting today, the white wine, Moscofilero, it's about 2,000 feet of elevation, which is really, really, really high altitude, creates really flavorful wines. So this is George Skouras. He's the founder of Domaine Skouras, and he's one of the godfathers of modern Greek winemaking. He built Domaine Skouras in 1986, and he studied in France in Dijon and brought a lot of his experience working in France and applying those to Greek varietals. Then we got his son Dimitri, who's taken over, and he's a great winemaker and is the next generation. And I have some pictures. You can see how it is like a rolling hills and valleys. And this is the Mantinea region. You can see some of these beautiful tall mountains with vineyards just facing the sun. So really unique climate, terroir here. Definitely worth visiting. I highly recommend going there if you're traveling to Greece. It's only a short drive from Athens, so you don't have to take a flight or a ferry. It's right there. You can take a bus. And I have a quick video. Can I play this? This is just George Skouras describing Moscofilero.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's just better at describing it than me, and I love the way he speaks about it. He speaks like poetry, the way he talks about these grapes. Can you hear it okay?
Actually, I don't hear it.
No? Take my headphones out.
Oh, there it goes.
This in the center of Peloponnese, I make wine with the last 20 years. Moscofilero, it is a grape variety in the.
Wait, I realized I could reshare my audio. I think that may make it easier to hear. Tell me if this.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Moscofilero, it's my grape. I love that. Moscofilero is a grape variety. We find it up, and because of that, it's typical. At about 2,200, and imagine the harvest. As this area it's an area by itself, they have red. So there is Aspro, which is more green. There is the Xanthophyllero, blonde Filero, which is another grape. The Mavrofilero, which is a black Filero. So a lot of the wine, not color. It's unbelievable. So like transparent, but the wine is always aromatic. See aroma. Filero, it's hard to one. Because we go for scent of pre-round juice after that, and to the rain like that to have that grape.
Cool. So yeah, just wanted to share that because I feel like he talks so well about Moscofilero, and sometimes it's hard to speak better than the man who makes wine himself. So Moscofilero again is the main white variety of this region, and maybe we should have a little taste before we talk about the rest.
So I think we have two Moscofileros from Skouras, right? But they're equally delicious, but one obviously is different than the other, right?
Yeah, so we have the two. We have the regular Moscofilero, and then so that's a 2019 Moscofilero from Skouras. That's the classic style. And one thing he didn't mention that I think is important mentioning, like the words Mosco Filero, it's kind of, it basically means like the smell of flowers. And this is when you have this wine for the first time, you're kind of struck by how floral it is. It's a very delicious, bright floral wine, really, really, really aromatic. It kind of reminds me of style dry Riesling or Greek Gewürztraminer or Pinot Gris, like wines in that category that are like light but aromatic at the same time. That's something I really love about them. They're so fresh, they're so complex, aromatic, floral, just really delicious. Plus, they go with a lot of different dishes because they have the bright acidity, and having high acidity does help with pairing with food. That's always something.
I'm a big fan of Moscow Filero. I'm a big fan of white wine. I drink a ton of different types of white wines. But what I like to suggest or recommend whites in general, Moscow Filero is in that top selection of recommendations. And I don't even tell people what it is before I let them try it. I just let them try it first, and then I tell them what happens after. And it always works.
That's always a good idea. Because I feel like a lot of times, especially when people are trying wines from countries that they're not familiar with, or trying wines that they don't know so well, it's kind of nice to just let them taste it without having any preconceived idea of what it is. And that's something I love to do when I'm sharing wine with people.
Awesome.
Just like get them try it and then talk to them about it. You know, let them make their own, have their own opinion, form their own opinion about the wine without maybe bringing in any sort of incorrect biases, maybe taint their experience. So that's something I always like to do. Let people really taste it for what it is, and then talk about the history and what makes. Yeah, I love this wine. And what George Skouras was mentioning in the video, how it's a unique grape because there's so many different types of clones that all fall under the same family of Moscow Filero. And it's unique because it is a white grape, but it has a pink skin. So if you actually go to see the grapes, they don't look white. You'd think they're like you're making a rosé or something out of them. Yeah, and actually the second Moscow Filero we have is the Salto Moscow Filero. So it's another style from George Skouras, and this is another version. Yep. So the Salto Moscow Filero is 100% made with the Mavro Filero clone. So Mavro Filero is the black Filero, so it's a much darker skinned version of the grape.
But it's still white grape.
But it's still white, yeah. So it's still white, but it has a little bit more complexity because of the skin. The skin color has more compounds. And what makes this unique, this wine extra special, is they use only wild yeast to ferment the wine. So, a lot of times when you're making a wine, you're using inoculated yeast, special yeasts that you want. But by using the wild yeasts, you're basically capturing flavor that is natural to the area. It's a little bit more, terroir driven, completely capturing all the flavors that are special to the region of Mantinea and the Peloponnese.
And Johnny, where did the term Salto come from? Is that it? Because here's the thing: when I've come across this before, I always get asked, "Does the wine taste salty?"
Yeah.
So, no, it doesn't.
Right. No.
But there's some element of dryness that I don't know if that's where it comes from, or if there's some other relation to the term Salto. But
I always get asked these questions where the names come from, and I don't always know. I can't honestly answer that. But maybe I like to say alto means tall, and it's a high elevation.
I just answered my own question. on the back of the label.
Maybe Susanna has some insight. I don't know.
Well, I think we should start with the meaning of the name Nemea.
Okay.
Which means it comes from the verb to graze. It means grazing land. And so it was, a wonderful land, which originally, of course, when the Greeks came in, they had cattle. But now you would see that it's sheep and goats and beautiful rolling hills. And it was famous, and this may have something to do with the term, it was famous for its celery, the area. Or wild celery. You have to realize that Greeks, as well as drinking wonderful wine and having indigenous grapes, have about 125 different wild greens that they eat. And among them, wild celeries, wild parsleys, all kinds of cress. And this area is famous for all of those. You can go on.
Are they known for the term horta?
Yes, which is the same as our cohort. Somebody that you farm with. is what it is.
Really? I never knew that.
Susanna, you're always such a pleasure because I always learn something new with you.
It's true. There's so much to learn. I love that. I didn't know that at all.
And since you're speaking of aroma, do you realize what aroma means? It comes from homa, which means soil, which means that it is the scent of freshly turned dirt.
Oh.
Wow. Have you seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding? It's like the word comes from this word.
I know.
Awesome.
I love the Moscow Field Rose. I think they're incredibly refreshing. The variety of them, the complexity. For me, I may be kind of off the margins here, but I find it more a summer wine.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoy its refreshingness. I am absolutely a devotee of Agricultico and of the lowlands and the highlands and everything from cinnamon and fruits to chocolate and oak in them, which I absolutely adore. So I don't know whether we're going to get that far, but if we move up to the other regions. I'm also just to add a few notes about how long it's been a grape growing region. Of course, this is the Argolid, which is from Argos, and Mycenae is in it, as is Corinthos. So this is the center of the Mycenaean civilization, and where Argos and Jason and the Argonauts sailed from, and where the whole Iliad and Odyssey take place. They sail from here. And the mythology of Nemea and the Lion of Nemea that Heracles conquers. So there are Minoan sites. There are many, many Mycenaean sites. They, of course, were already infiltrating when the Minoans still were dominant, and only took over after the Minoans disappeared with the eruption of Santorini. And so they've been growing these grapes for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
So did these Mycenaeans and these voyages include wine in their voyages? Do we have any recollection recordings of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, but the main thing they were trading, in all honesty, was olive oil.
Really?
They were the first to be able to press actual olive oil. The Minoans were, and you can still see a lot of their circulars, their press. And that the trade was major. The major thing was in olive oil, but in terms of the grapes, they took the grapes. They and the Mycenaeans and the early Greeks took the grapes all over the Levant, that is Lebanon and Israel, all over Turkey, up through what is now Armenia and Croatia, over to France, up the Loire Valley, and over to Spain. So when people talk about the Agriorgitico related to Sangiovese in Italy, it's probably accurate. And certainly most of if you take the DNA down of many of the grapes of Italy and the whole Mediterranean region, you'll find that they came from Greeks spreading the grape seeds.
Nice. Well, I want to make a quick comment to what you just mentioned, Susanna. When I first was introduced to Agriorgitico, this is going back 25 years, and at that time, and I remember listening to George Skouras, where he was giving us a lecture about Nemea, where in the beginning they were still trying to understand Agriorgitico from a farming, from growing, and from a production standpoint, and they were trying to master it, or they were trying to refine it. So when I first started tasting Agriorgitico 25 years ago, back then when they were producing it, the thought was it reminded people of something close to Gamay or wines from Beaujolais, right? And then as time went on and they started to actually evolve, and they got better at producing their wine practices, and Agriorgitico was evolving. Now you mentioned when we drink different selections of Agriorgitico from Nemea, it's reminding us of Sangiovese. It's amazing how over 20 years, how the evolution of the flavor profile, the characteristics have changed because of the methods and the mastering of the grape have changed as well. That now we find ourselves that it's being more related to a different part of the world. And it's fascinating to just listen to what you're saying, and then I'm listening to myself on what I remember Agriorgitico from what it used to taste like and what it tastes like today.
Those are all good points. Yeah, and I feel like depending on the winemaker, you could get a lot of different styles and types of ayorit. And actually in the region of Nemea, they also make sweet wine, dessert wine out of ayoritico as well, which is really interesting to see how one grape, one region, a lot of different styles and types of wine. Because I think the St. George that we have today from Skouras is kind of like Gamay style, like a Pinot Noir. It is a little bit lighter, but then I've had other ones that are maybe aged in a barrel for 2 years. They have this, they have their kind of like a Sangiovese, have so much going on in depth, and it's cool to see. Depending on the winemaker and the location of the vineyards, you could have kind of like just a range from the variety. It's really fun to see.
What's interesting too about Nemea is that I noticed most producers also produce estate wines, so they grow their own grapes versus purchasing their grapes.
Yeah,
which I find to be very fascinating within a small region compared to other parts of the world.
Yeah, and Domaine Skouras also he has all his own vineyards that he grows his own, which all go into this line of. And the St. George is one of his most popular, best-selling labels, but he also has the Grand Cuvée, which is a single vineyard expression using aging in all new oak, as well as you've had the Megasinos, which is a blend of Ayoritico and Cabernet.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, a few different types of styles using the Ayoritico grape.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Megasinos was the first label from Nemea to really elevate and put the Ayoritico variety on a high tier. Like Megasinos was like the cuvée or the reserve of Ayoriticos that really touched upon the interest of or international wine drinkers. Megasinos.
Totally. Yeah, no, that was one of the first wines that we imported. And I think before that wine came to the States, the first vintage, I think, was the 1986 vintage was the first vintage. And so, yeah, right now and that was one of the first wines from Greece to kind of put Greek wines on a more, bring kind of theme to region and show that Greek winemakers are taking it seriously and are able to produce really delicious, serious, age-worthy wines that can compete, with France, Italy, Spain, U.S. And the Megasinos was that label, was that brand that kind of turned the attention and the spotlight onto Greece.
Yeah,
which is great because I think he had to blend Cabernet in there. It's like, I'll taste. I know Cabernet. I'll drink that. And then from there, it opened the doors and allowed us to.
I think my first was the Grand Reserve.
Yeah.
Which I still am extremely fond of. And it's more the Highland Ayoritico, wouldn't you say? A little more chocolatey, a little less fruit forward, but it's still within the Ayoritico range of flavor. Still, certainly a little more fruit forward than Xinomavro, but absolutely delightful.
Totally. I definitely agree. And it's awesome how having a higher altitude vineyard creates so much more flavor. And I think that's what makes a lot of the Greek wine growing regions so special and so unique is that they grow on these high altitude valleys and mountains. You capture so much flavor, so much aroma, so much complexity. And it just speaks to the uniqueness and the biodiversity of Greece and their terroir.
I'm sure we're going to be starting to get some questions soon, but so Nemea now, being cultivated for so many years, St. George, so it's named after St. George, right? The variety. So it's named after, if I'm not mistaken, Susanna, was there a Byzantine church in Nemea called St. George?
That's what it comes from. And of course, St. George, as with many countries, including England, St. George is the patron saint of Greece. Okay. And you have to realize what George means because most people don't. And that is the G-E-O on George is the same as geography, geology. It means earth. So George was a farmer.
Oh.
That's what George means.
That's what that. So all the Georges I know, I'm going to start calling them farmers.
Yes.
That makes
Is there any?
sense.
I feel like I heard this, but maybe it's a rumor, and I feel like Susanna might know. But I always thought that people called the wine Saint George because in the icons of Saint Yorgos, you see him with the spear,
Yes.
like stabbing a dragon or like a monster, and it's like the blood. I don't know in the vines. I've heard that. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just a made up myth.
I think that's that's a little.
As Greeks, we love
rewriting the narrative.
Yeah.
It's probably more because he was the patron saint of the region.
Okay.
And it means little Saint George. It doesn't mean direct Saint George. It means little tiny saint.
Yeah, little Saint George, Euritico.
So do we know, is that church still there? Or is that way? All right,
I don't know.
Excellent. Susanna, I've always noticed that when we ship wine to Susanna, because we have that ability, you always get a lot of Nemea in your packages, right?
Yes.
That says a lot for us because, we get a lot of questions, we get a lot of emails, and we get a lot of folks. Those that actually are heavy red wine drinkers and want to try Greek reds, they're always asking, what can you recommend? Because I love to drink cabs. I'm a red blend drinker. Usually we always gravitate to wines from Nemea, not because they're exactly like that, but I think because they have enough structure, they have enough depth, they have great flavor profiles. And recently, in the last handful of years, they're so well balanced that I think that anyone that's tried wines from Nemea are immediately sold on wines.
Oh, totally. They're so approachable, and I feel like they work with a variety of palate types. Right. And when I was working at my family's restaurants, I felt like I would never make someone upset when I brought a bottle of Ayurvedico to the table, because it's a type of wine that, like, if you're a Cabernet drinker, I think you'd like it. If you're a Pinot Noir drinker, you're gonna love it. If you like Sangiovese, you're gonna love it. There's something that has components of all those types of wines.
Right.
It doesn't resemble all of them, but it has little aspects of each of them in it that I think makes it a versatile wine that, depending on who you are, what kind of wines you like, it's great. And that's why it's a great wine for parties. It's a great wine if you're having a dinner over with a lot of people and you don't know what to open up, because it's something that goes well with food. They age well. They depending on who's making them, they typically age them in oak or a variety of styles of oak. So they tend to do very well aging. And they're pretty value-driven wines. They're not that expensive. And I feel like the Skouras St. George, for example, I'm not sure, Ari, how much you sell it for, but
it retails in the mid-teens.
Yeah,
I mean,
under $20, and I think you're getting a bottle of wine that tastes a lot more expensive than it is.
Correct.
Which is, and people really tend to people really do love it. So
a very famous wine critic who claims that this is the wine he serves at Easter, and he's not Greek.
It's a perfect Easter wine.
It's perfect, and I think that's appropriate.
Yeah. I bought magnums of the St. George Skouras for Easter for my family. Because one bottle is not enough for my Greek family.
Oh no!
So I got to get double-sized bottles, and it was definitely a hit. Because they have, they're full. They have enough body and tannins to kind of match up to meat, to lamb.
Right.
But at the same time, they're not overly tannic. They're very kind of in the middle, so that you could have a few glasses over the course of the Easter day while you're waiting for the lamb to finish roasting.
Well, we got Thanksgiving coming up, right? So I'm sure there's a place on the table for Ayurvedico for
100%.
Because I know that as Greek families, and we still do this as much as we think that we're going to change, that right next to the turkey, there's always platters of some type of lamb dish.
That's how my family does it. My family's a mix of Italian and Greek, so we do a turkey. My mom makes a lasagna, and then my grandma or my dad will do like a lamb roulade. It's always a whole medley. And I can't wake up the next day without holding my stomach up.
Johnny, I think I'm coming to your house for Easter, so prepare yourself.
I have to add what I do. I make scordalia, and I slather the turkey in scordalia while I'm roasting it.
Wait, that is genius.
And the crust is amazing.
Do you do like a
crust is
potato
about,
scordalia?
yes, a potato almond scordalia, and I mean, I slather it. It's covered in it, and the crust comes out, a good quarter of an inch, covered in garlic paste. And
Susanna.
Johnny, cancel my trip to your house. I'm going to Susanna's.
Susanna, we got to do a cooking demo with you.
Well, yeah, that's great. I just learned something new. Because, with the turkey, it's funny because every Thanksgiving, it's like the last thing everyone eats. We always eat the Greek stuff first.
Right.
And that could be a way to save the turkey, to cover it in scordalia. For those of you who don't know what scordalia is, it's a classic Greek dish or accompaniment, or it's
all of the above.
It's a lot of things. It's like, depending on how you make it, it could be a dip, but it's potato based with garlic, and some people make it with bread and garlic, and some people use, and there's always like almonds or nuts sometimes involved. But the main thing is the garlic.
Lots of garlic.
Lots of garlic.
And I will add something to that. It is the main thing that Greeks argue over: whose mother makes it best.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. I want to cover my turkey with that, and then have a glass of Ayuritico on the side, and I think I'll be a happy person this week.
Oh man, we should do like a virtual connection and try during Thanksgiving and see what's going on.
Oh yeah, I'll take pictures and I'll show you.
Perfect. No, I mean,
that's Johnny's polite way of saying no, Fati. I'm not gonna.
I'll
you in real time.
I'll have Zoom in the background. I'll be cooking the turkey.
Well,
I can't. I don't.
I understand. We're gonna have a lot of Zoom Thanksgivings this year.
It's funny. This is the first Thanksgiving where it's going to be less than 30 people in my house.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we're just doing only the immediate family and a few cousins.
Well,
but we'll see. It'll probably grow by the time Thanksgiving comes.
We'll make sure
no one has the heart to say no to somebody.
Right, exactly. But in any I think that we've got some good questions that just came in from our audience, and we'd like to take the time to kind of give them some attention to what they're asking.
Sure.
Ari, you want to run down some of the questions that came in?
Sure. Okay. I think the first one is, do they make sparkling?
They make sparkling all around Greece, but I do not believe in Nemea it can be called Nemea if it's sparkling, because Nemea is only red grapes. It's only Ayuritico.
Okay.
I've never actually had a sparkling Moscow Filero before.
Actually, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Yeah.
I have there is a sparkling from Mantinea, and Mr. Yanis Telepos, the main Telepos, actually produces a sparkling called Amalia that's made from Moscow Filero.
Oh yeah, I did have that. I
And
forgot that was Moscato.
That's a champagne method sparkler. So yeah, they do. Well, in Mantinea, that's the only one that I'm aware of.
You're right.
But as Johnny had said, I think that different producers, and we did have, for example, in our last segment, we had Stamatis Milonas on, and he's in Attiki, and they're exploring sparkling wine. So I think that the areas around Greece are starting to explore this category. But
yeah,
yes.
we import some sparklings from northern Greece, and also in Santorini they do make some sparkling wine as well. With the Sirtiko. We just brought in limited amount of sparkling petnat from Santorini, from Vasaltis, which is
When's that going to come?
We had a few came in earlier this year, and it sold out instantly. We are now bringing in a bunch. So
Johnny,
I think at the end of the year we have some more coming in.
Can you just tell us real quickly to our audience, what does petnat mean?
It means it's like a shortened of like two French words, pétillant naturel. So it's a more traditional, it's called like an ancient method of producing sparkling wines. So, you have a lot of different ways to make sparkling wines. Method Charmat, where the wine goes through secondary fermentation tank, which gets all the bubbles. Then you have method Champenois, which is the champagne method, basically how they make wine, sparkling wine and champagne, where secondary fermentation occurs in the bottle. And that's how the carbonation gets in. And then the petnat is it's an ancient method or a rural or artisanal method, where basically it's bottled. The wine is bottled before fermentation is complete. So when they're doing fermentation, fermentation creates alcohol. It creates CO2. And normally the CO2 is released out. But this basically, before the wine is finished fermenting, they put it in a bottle and cap it. So it finishes fermentation in the bottle, which allows all that carbon dioxide and natural sugars in the grapes to just kind of capture and create carbonation inside the bottle. But typically, they're a little bit lighter in terms of how carbonated they are compared to champagne.
Right.
But typically, I feel like most pet nats you see nowadays are they're kind of a little bit funkier. They're a little bit more unique.
So when you pour a glass of pet nat and it's cloudy and mucky looking, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're more of like an artisanal, just like a rustic style of winemaking, but they have a lot of fun flavors, and there's so many different types now that I've been trying where they have a little bit of sourness to it, but in a good way. Yeah, they make them all over the world, and it's becoming a lot more popular now.
So
as like the natural wine movement.
Yeah, keep your Ari, keep your eyes out on pet nat.
Oh, I was a little bit embarrassed because when he first said pet nat, I laughed along with you guys, but I had no idea what he was talking about. So thanks, Foti, for asking him to explain that. One more question. Actually, a couple more questions. In the same vein of the first question, how about rosés?
Yeah. So I believe technically, if it has a Nemea label, it has to be a red wine. But they do make rosés out of Ayoritico. And George Skouras actually makes a rosé called the Zoe rosé, which is a blend of actually Ayoritico and Moscofilero. So it has both grapes in there. So like you have the floral aromatics, freshness from the Moscofilero, and then the Ayoritico gives it some body and the color. So they do make rosés in the region. But yeah, with the PDO, the appellation of Nemea, oftentimes comes with rules and laws that they must follow to call the wine Nemea. So I don't think you could have a rosé called Nemea, but I'm sure that people do make rosés in that region and with the Ayoritico variety.
Okay.
They just call it Rosé Ayoritico from the Peloponnese.
Excellent. All right. Another question. Do Nemea wines age well?
Oh, yes.
I like that response.
Yeah. I mean, they age very, very well. I mean, what I love about these wines is that you can drink them young. You can drink them fresh. They're meant to be drunk now, but with aging, they just get better and more complex and delicious. Yeah, I think they age very, very well. They have strong tannins, so that helps the wines develop in the bottle. But yeah, they're great because you can have them now, or you could I'll definitely buy 6 bottles, have one now, have one next year, then leave one in there for a while.
That's not going to happen.
Have some now, save some for later. Okay, one more question as far as I see here. Do they grow other red grapes in Nemea?
So they do grow them, but like to be considered Nemea, it has to be Ayoritico. So Nemea is really like 100% dedicated to Ayoritico. But probably in the areas surrounding Nemea is where they'll grow other grapes. I mean, George Skouras, his winery produces Chardonnay, he produces Syrah, he produces Cabernet, Moscofilero. So he makes a lot of different types of wine in that region. But Nemea is really just 100% Ayoritico. That's the best. That's a grape that does the best in that region. So people focus on that grape in Nemea and Ayoritico. But they can grow other wines, other grapes, but it's just not going to have the Nemea stamp. They'll bottle it as a separate thing.
Somebody wrote sporits. I'm going to assume they mean spirits.
Maybe Tsipuro. Yeah. So we Diamond Importers, we import Tsipuro, which is a Greek grape distillate, and from a distillery called Verino, which is in the similar region in the Peloponnese, and he buys all the grape skins from George Skouras, and he makes fantastic Tsipuros out of Ayoritico and out of Moscofilero. And so to make Tsipuro, you take the skins and sediment. Basically, after you finish making the wine, you take the leftover skins and you go and you distill that. Basically, all the alcohol, the wine that was left in the skins, now you could capture that and bottle it. So you have this really extremely flavorful aromatic spirit called Tsipuro that comes from the grape to this. So yes, they do make fantastic spirits in the region, mainly Tsipuro.
Nothing goes to waste.
No, nothing. And another, I guess it's kind of close. The city of Patra Patras is pretty close to Nemea.
Couple hours.
Right. Yeah, a couple hours, but it's on the
West Coast.
Yeah.
Well, Northwest.
In the Peloponnese, right? Yeah, they make a spirit called tentura. Tentura is a cinnamon liqueur that they basically they don't cinnamon doesn't it's not something you really grow in Greece, but because a spice trade passed through the town of Patra, they had a lot of different spices like cloves and cinnamon that passed through that was trading in there, and they would make liqueurs out of them. So tentura is another you could find from.
I have a question for Susanna. Are you a tsipuro or a key drinker?
Kudia,
Tsipuro.
where I came from.
Oh, yeah.
Corrected.
Susanna, I just want to tell you, my mom's maiden name is Tsikudakis. So she told me growing up that her family invented tsikudia, and I like to believe that that's true. So
Where are
you're welcome.
Royalties, my friend. But I think it's fascinating that this whole like circle of growing grapes, producing wine, and then taking what's left over and producing spirits, which actually end up becoming, they're called apostagmata, but they're also a form of digestivos. They help us digest the whole experience that we just went through food and wine. Isn't that, to me, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I love that, and
You know that,
nothing goes to waste.
No,
That's why tsipuro in Greece it's so plentiful. It's abundant. You find it everywhere. It's pretty inexpensive. It's it's a casual drink you have everywhere in the tavernas. It's because in Greece no one's throwing away the skins. Like no one's just going to throw anything away. Nothing's going to go to waste. So every drop of juice from those grapes is going to be put in a bottle and in one form or another.
And now I'm coming across this.
You should tell people that tsipora and tikudia are the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just a dialect difference.
But depending where you come from in Greece, no one wants to group it as one thing. It's like we own this. We own
of course not.
But
basically, it's the same thing.
The other thing that I'm coming across lately, if you haven't seen yourself, is barrel aged tsipuro tsikudia. That's becoming a thing.
Yes, it
right?
is so good.
That's
crazy.
crazy.
It's like taking cognac, but like adding aroma to it. Like cognac, I don't drink too much cognac or armagnac, but I have some barrel aged tsipuros where they're so soft and smooth and like they're mysterious too. Like it's a perfect after dinner drink.
Right.
But they're dangerous because they're so easy to drink that you don't realize they're like 45% alcohol.
So the fact that we're getting into this new world of aging tsipuro or barrel aging, and to me it's like, wow, this is amazing, because no one would ever think that tsipuro would take this level of production. But I'm getting a lot of conversations with others that are seeking out barrel aged tsipuro or tsikudia.
Yeah, well, grape-based spirits and grapes in general, grape products like wine and brandy, they do well in barrel aging. Those flavors, the flavors of the barrel, I think help tsipuro develop and change. And I think, in Greece, like a lot of people were always, they rather have ordered cognac, right? Like or bourbon, or they weren't looking at what they could make it themselves. So they never thought to barrel age it. And now you're starting, over the last 20 years, you're starting to see people do more experimentation.
Right.
And I think I've been trying to study a little bit about tsipuro, its history, and it's a very unique thing because only until the 2000s were you legally allowed to commercially sell tsipuro. Before that, it was really just something you were making at home. Yeah, it was that was it. It was something you either made at home or you had like one distillery in the village that would basically make tsipuro with everyone's grapes. You weren't bottling it and going to a liquor store and like buying tsipuro.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that you say that, I think you're right. Like I never saw tsipuro prior to 2000.
No, yeah, you weren't. It wasn't something you commercially. There was no commercial distilleries for tsipuro. There would be like more smaller production, more just to share with neighbors. But now that the market is open, you commercially produce it, you're going to see people, because basically they could sell it now, so there's more money that can go into it.
Well,
maybe that's what my mom was talking about when she said her family invented it.
Yeah. Well, distilling came quite late to Greece. I mean, they in the ancient times, they certainly had every kind of wine and all of these indigenous grapes that you can imagine. But they didn't distill anything but, strangely enough, they did distill turpentine. it was only about 500 years ago that they actually began to distill what the remainders of the grape. So I'm not saying that this is new, Cipro and Cicudia, but it's in Greece's terms, it's relatively new.
Yeah.
Was there someone responsible for teaching them how to distill?
It all goes to the monks. I mean, Cipro does. Cipro started, I think, in the monasteries in northern Greece, in the south, Mount Athos.
If I wanted to make Cipro in my backyard, can I still call it Cipro?
No, legally you could only call it
protected.
Yeah, legally you could only call it Cipro if it's from Greece.
Because I correct me if I'm wrong. There was somebody in either Pennsylvania or New York, upstate New York, that was actually trying to bottle domestic Cipro.
There's also, I heard it, I think it was in Oregon actually.
Oregon? Somewhere.
There was a distillery making, no. Okay, in Oregon there was a distillery making ouzo, and then I think it was in New Jersey a distillery making Cipro. And I think they're still calling it Cipro, but technically they can't. Technically, it's against the rules of the EU. The EU protects Cipro the same way champagne has to come from Champagne, France. And
what if your legal last name is Tsikudakis?
I think only Ari gets a pass. Then you might be able to slip a Greek 20.
It has to be little Cipro.
Yeah. I'm a Tsikudaki.
You could only make it in little bottles. Then you'd be okay.
Nice. Excellent. Wow, this is great. We've learned so much in this segment. Even though we're choosing certain regions, we're just really dissecting and breaking it down with fun facts, history, plenty of knowledge. This is where it's at when it comes to, I think, in my opinion, exploring, learning, and understanding. Because I think at the end of the day, understanding it translates to appreciating. I think when someone really appreciates the understanding, then things do taste better.
Absolutely.
And I think, just by trying new wines from different regions, you get to travel the world. We love traveling to the regions of Greece, especially in this group. I think anyone joining us now loves Greek, but Greece is such a unique and diverse country that you could go to all these different regions and try something completely different with a whole different story and history behind it. So definitely recommend continue to try new things and travel through the villages and vineyards of Greece through their wines.
Susanna, anything that you want to kind of include towards this last part of our segment about Nemea? Anything that you want to add before we kind of come to a close?
Well, in talking about the different regions, remember that in ancient times, Greece was just a whole series of tribes. They weren't united Greece. And so when you took each region, such as Nemea and the others, and Sparta, which certainly became the dominant force in the Peloponnesus, was a collection of different tribes of regions. And that's partly why you're getting so many different indigenous grapes and approaches to the wines. So if we think of Greece as united, it's only been united for a very short time. It was diverse and tribal, and essentially what held it together was the Greek Orthodox religion as opposed to a government.
And I'm still surprised that we're still united.
Apparently here too.
Right.
So I think we're good. We're no more questions. And I had an amazing, this was actually a really good webinar. I learned a lot myself. I had a lot of fun, and it flew by. And I just want to say thank you so much, Susanna. Your knowledge, your history. I'm a history geek myself, and sometimes when you teach me these things, which I'm on the internet basically 12 hours a day, I'm like, how do I not know these things? Thank you so much for the knowledge that you bring, Johnny. You're our brother, man. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Thank you so much for the knowledge you bring. Thank you so much for the multiple webinars that you do with us. We love you. And, you're a handsome guy. You look like me. That's what I hear. So, that's a bonus for you.
And before we forget, I want to also add that for those of us that are intrigued about the wines that we were discussing and tasting, they are available on our platform, on our shopping cart at urbanwineclub.co and also greekwineclub.co. I should mention that as well. And coming soon, there's another platform that Ari's going to mention that we can find all of our Greek wine products along with Greek food products.
I wasn't actually going to mention it because you're all business. I'm all just, loving everybody, but I'll mention it. We're releasing a Greek shopping app, so look out for that. But something very important, I think, dear to all of our hearts, we have a donation campaign for the people of Samos for the earthquake. So we'll post the link to that as well with our video and podcast. But I just want to say thank you so much again. Johnny, you're awesome. You know your stuff, man, and we appreciate your time. Susanna, you are amazing. You have 4 books coming out, and you still made it here. And I didn't even sing my official "Oh Susanna" song to you when you joined tonight.
On the next one.
I'll do it next time. I forgot this time. But
it's Ari. It's a nonsense song, so for you, it's appropriate.
Oh yes, exactly. See, Susanna knows me very well. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thanks, everybody out there. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Foti. We will see you guys next time. Thanks, everyone, and good night.
Kalinigta.
Kalinigta. Yamas.
Kalinigta.